Political scientists have called upon President Museveni, who is the current chairman of the non-aligned movement, to use his power and push for the establishment of a secretariat for effective monitoring and follow-up on the resolutions made. Dr. Paul Lacuna, the senior research fellow at Economic Policy Research Center, said that if NAM organization is to be effective, the establishment of a secretariat will play a critical role in following up the resolutions.
One of the reasons the non-aligned movement has not achieved a lot of its objectives in the last 60 years is the lack of a framework or the lack of institutional arrangement to follow up on the agreements which are signed by the representative head of states and heads of government. And it's our prayer, we the citizens of those nations that are under the chairmanship of the President of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, if a secretariat could be established, preferably an interim secretariat in Kampala, to follow up before members vote where the headquarter of the non-aligned movement could be. We could start from Kampala. I would implore the new chairman to put that as one of his agenda. It's easy to discuss things at strategic level, but following them up, the operational issues, the bread and butter of a system depends on bureaucracy, a very efficient bureaucracy, and we need to establish that bureaucracy.
During the summit, global conflicts were discussed. Top on the agenda was the Israel-Palestinian Gaza war that has left over 20,000 lives lost. The President of the United Nations General Assembly, Dennis Francis, called upon the non-aligned movement to exert its influence in bringing a halt to the carnage that is hopelessly being witnessed in the Gaza Strip.
After various iterations of war over several decades, I am convinced that a negotiated political solution is the sole path through which both Israelis and Palestinians will see realized their fundamental right to a life of peace based on the two-state solution. As President of the General Assembly, I will support and encourage any and all initiatives to that end.
It is from this background that the South African representative to the summit, Grace Naledi Pandor, called for the inclusive of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, which will represent the bigger percentage of the global population. The current 5 permanent members for the United Nations include the United States of America, Russia, China, France, and the United Kingdom. This, according to Grace, cannot address the needs of all countries and people in the world.
As this non-aligned movement, we should continue to advocate strongly for a system of global governance that is fair, equitable, and has the capacity to respond to the needs of all countries and peoples. A system that is not just a tool for the most powerful countries of the world. These reforms include our belief that the United Nations Security Council is in need of urgent reform. After all, it has the unique mandate for the maintenance of international peace and security, and is not of a form that is able to exercise that mandate. We believe the Security Council should be expanded with urgency to include countries from Africa, Asia, and Latin America as permanent members.
Since 2005, Africa, through the African Union, has been pushing for the position of the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, but this has not succeeded. Political analysts, however, say that this move will be difficult on account that it may challenge the powers and interests of the 5 permanent members.
As you have to do, but once you get to the Security Council, the dynamics change, the whole dynamic change. We talk about the Security Council, but the decision made affect economies, economically, politically, and in quite a number of ways. So if they can push for something and we attain at least maybe 10 to maybe even 20%, 15% of what they are pushing for, that will be a move in the right direction. But the way I know how the current members, certain members that I can't mention one by one here, remain in charge, the likelihood that we'll achieve it wholesale is most likely not going to come through.
The first global organization was the League of Nations, and it could not hold the world together. It collapsed, and then after the Second World War, we came to the United Nations. And then, of course, these countries positioned themselves as the top countries. But I can assure you, after over 75 years, things have changed. Countries have come up. There are countries that were not anywhere. They're so powerful. So are we going to perpetually deny them a position on the Security Council? I think the United Nations Security Council, or the United Nations as an entity itself, needs to metamorphose. It needs to grow from this stage with the current realities. The current realities, I'm not even advocating for in Africa. We could even have as many as 6 to 8 countries to join this club.
The non-aligned movement member states consist of 120 members, where 80% are part of the United Nations. Despite not having a secretariat and its resolutions being non-binding, it can influence decisions at the United Nations.
And again, therefore, this organization called NAM realized that there could be benefits for not aligning yourself with either the East or the West. And of course, being a number of countries, I think 120, had a voice. And that voice is very relevant in an organization like the United Nations. And therefore, you can see that NAM translated or transisted from focusing on anti-colonialism movement to a development movement within these countries.
Formed in 1961, the non-aligned movement seeks to promote the interests of its member states, which include economic transformation, among others. Sada Mubale, UBC News, Kampala.